Hello, my name is AJ Fox. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Director of Religious Education. And we have a very, not compared to like 3 months ago, but we have a very small group in the sanctuary today, for those of you on Zoom and those of you here. I suspect it is because it's Father's Day that we have a small group in the sanctuary. But we have a relatively small group, which is probably not a terrible thing because I wrote a whole bunch of today's message and I kept thinking, man, I need to like liven this up. And then I was like, look at you. Y'all were the audience I was ready for. But that's besides the point. I need a volunteer or 2 or 3 to open this wonder box over here for me. Vonna gets on it. Yep. I saw some eyes back here. Y'all want to go up?
Oh, Sarah.
Oh, Sarah's on too. All right. So we're gonna open the wonder box and I'm gonna have Luna put the screen up that shows a picture of what's in it. So y'all can open it and see what's in it. What? No, it's on the slideshow. I just changed things. I added slides. I'm sorry, Luna. There we go. So this is what's in the wonder box, which is a calendar of June and a whole bunch of stickers. So there's a whole bunch of fun rainbow unicorns and sunshine stickers. And those of you who have opened the wonder box are welcome to take the wonder box back with you. And I'll explain the calendar in just a second. Go with it. I'll get you all calendars. Hold on. Sometimes in the middle of December, remember that December, the cold of December, we can feel inundated with holidays. It can feel like there's so many world religions all huddling their holy days up together all around the winter solstice. And the summer solstice, this year, this is on Tuesday, June 21st, is similarly surrounded in a way, although likely more by chance. There's Flag Day on June 14th and Independence Day on the 4th of July that put us in the middle of a lead up of patriotism and fireworks and parties. And yes, the day the Declaration of Independence was signed was likely essentially by chance, but maybe our attraction to fireworks has more to do with the holiday's proximity to the summer solstice than we might think at first glance. And Father's Day is June 19th this year. You can see I made it. There's no calendar that shows all this stuff on the same calendar. I had to write it in. Father's Day is June 19th this year. And it's only so close to the summer solstice because the founder's own father's birthday was about this week in the year. And then there's Pride. And Pride is marking the beginning of not just Pride parties, but also riots, right? And I think bricks are actually more likely to be launched in the summer heat, but the oppression of our LGBT plus siblings is a year-round affair, and their continual struggle for liberation is not seasonal. And then there's Juneteenth, and Juneteenth was finally declared a federal holiday last year by President Biden, but it had been a celebration of emancipation for Black Americans, about the release of Black Americans being held in slavery in the United States for generations. And that is also today. The federal holiday is tomorrow, but Juneteenth is today. And by celebrating and honoring the diversity of the holidays that land in this calendar together, we can live into our Unitarian Universalist values that call us together. So there's going to be a calendar for each of you. I'm going to make sure the 2 of you back there have some. And there are rainbow stickers and all sorts of silly other stickers to add for Pride for the month. And on that, I'll see you all again soon.
let us listen to the words of John Saxon. This religious community exists by its mission as a fire exists by burning itself. But a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it is the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the love, and the financial support of the members and friends of the community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community that transforms lives and serves the world. Your support, the free and generous support of each and every member and friend of this community, is what fuels this community and its mission. And without your support, the flame of justice, community, and love cannot burn brightly to warm ourselves and be a beacon in a world threatened by division and fear. You are invited to give generously and joyfully as you are willing and able. To donate to First UU, you can visit our church website at springfielduu.org. Click on the donate button at the top of the screen. If you prefer, you can also mail your contributions to the church. If you're here in the sanctuary, you can leave your contributions in the basket on the chalice table after the service. And note that we will be continuing to collect contributions to the Roots of Community project. Just put it on your memo line, on your check, or in the special, there's a place on the donate button. We appreciate your generosity and we continue together in our commitment to the values of our faith, to our people, and to our church. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit for the offertory. Love will guide us. It's hymn 131 if you have a hymnal. The lyrics will be on the screen. Hello again. If you take Highway 161 up past Willard, all the way through Stockton area, you run into a little town called Greenfield, Missouri. Has anybody ever been through Greenfield? Okay. The population was 1,220 on the last census. Does anybody know why I'm talking about Greenfield, Missouri? This year, Kim Morrison, the English teacher in Greenfield at the high school, who probably teaches the rural kids outside of Greenfield as well, was fired
The book she was fired over is a well-known young adult fiction book, also called YA fiction, called Dear Martin, by a author named Nick Stone. I've read the book. I read the book after she got fired. I gotta be honest, it made it interesting, right? Why would you get fired over this YA fiction? It's in the teen section at the library. And it follows a Black teenager as he navigates race and racially charged violence. The protagonist, a young high school-age Black man, writes a series of letters to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the book's called Dear Martin, as he struggles to understand the continued racial injustice he and his friends are experiencing in the world. Technically, Kim Morrison wasn't fired for teaching the book. She was fired for asking the students to fill out a worksheet, quantifying and reflecting on their own experiences with racial privilege. I guess the worksheet was too close to critical race theory for comfort. To sit with and acknowledge privilege was too much. Some educators, the school board in Greenfield, some educators are starting to realize that ignoring race doesn't make racial injustice disappear. When I started researching this worksheet that she sent out, which is pretty basic, I found that it wasn't really the best worksheet. And I found that there's way better material out there. The Colorado Girl Scouts, so the whole state of Colorado's Girl Scout organization, has produced pretty good materials teaching about race in Girl Scout troops. And their materials say the following couple of paragraphs. This is for their troop leaders. What are they called? Leaders, okay. Cool, I was not a person. For a long time, many people, including social learning experts, believed that if we did not call attention to racial differences, that children would be less likely to notice these biases themselves, and therefore less likely to discriminate against others. This is commonly known as the colorblind approach to handling discussions and interactions dealing with race. Research, however, has since disproven this theory. Aaron N. Winkler, a professor at the University of Wisconsin who studies racial identity, states, children pick up on the ways which whiteness is normalized and privileged in the United States society. Studies have shown again and again that children notice and begin assigning meaning to race at a very young age. Examples of this include distinguishing between white and Black people, and drawing conclusions about traits inherent to these groups of people. The good news is that research has shown that parents and guardians who talk meaningfully to their kids about race end up with better racial attitudes than parents or guardians who don't. Essentially, teaching and talking about race and talking about privilege is the path towards justice. Talking about power dynamics, saying them out loud, talking about privilege is the path to a more just world. So I looked up that worksheet thinking I might pass it out today, but it was only about racial privilege, and it only really specifically about the anti-Black biases that the protagonist in Dear Martin was experiencing, which were not relevant to most people in this audience. The answer was going to be a resounding, we don't experience that kind of racial injustice, right? We don't experience racially based bullying in high school for most of us, right? But then I started looking at what worksheets they actually are suggesting they pass out, what research back. Not to say that Kim Morrison in Greenfield, Missouri was not doing a very good job by passing out this worksheet, more that this is the next level, right? This is the deeper, more research-based level. And I wanted to make sure that when we were doing this, we were talking about privilege from an intersectionality perspective. Intersectionality is a term much like critical race theory that started out as a legal concept. It started out as a legal term to describe something that was happening in the courts. And intersectionality was coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw to describe intersections of privilege and power dynamics. She has an absolutely incredible TED Talk where she goes into detail on her motivations stemming from a legal case, and you should all go watch it. I'm not going to go into details on it, but essentially a court declared that it couldn't be that Black women were being discriminated against by a corporation, because either you could be discriminated against because you were Black or because you were a woman, but because the only people who were being affected were Black women in the particular corporation. I think it was, I don't want to say, it was an American car manufacturer, a huge one, GM or somebody. They decided that Black women couldn't be particularly discriminated against. And Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw said, actually, that's illogical. And you should all go watch it. She says that failing to look at the ways that different axes of marginalization play off or intersect with each other leaves us failing to understand the lived experience of those around us. So I'm going to give us an illustration now. This illustration comes from artist Sylvia Duckworth, and both this and the next image shown are used with permission from the artist. And remember that we're both in person and on Zoom and on Facebook Live and wherever else they put us. And so while you have the sheets in the sanctuary, we're going to take a minute and make sure everybody can see the screens that we're going to see. So, all right, so this first one you don't have in the sanctuary. This image shows a Venn diagram of sorts. There are 12 axes on it, 12 individual circles, although the illustration notes that there are many, many more axes of power. The circles on this image are labeled race, ethnicity, gender identity, class, language, religion, ability, sexuality, mental health, age, education, and body size. Okay? But there are more. There are more positions of power. There are more axes of power. And under the image appears a quote. The quote comes from Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, which reads, "Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where it locks and intersects. It is the acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experiences of discrimination and of privilege." So to explain this further, we can look at another image that Sylvia Duckworth created. Although this model is not hers, this is just, she's good at illustrating things. It's kind of her jam. And these similar worksheets are used to teach privilege and power in the educational settings that are doing the research first, including the Girl Scouts of Colorado. So what this is an image titled The Wheel of Power and Privilege, and it again includes these 12 axes of power, but this time they're slightly different, right? Because the 12 might essentially be random. This particular wheel doesn't have religion, it doesn't have age, and I think that it maybe only has skin tone, not race and ethnicity as two separate ones, right? But what really I want you to think about is that means that there's all these different ways that we can hold power and privilege or have experience marginalization. So we're going to go through this wheel real quick, and I'm going to ask you to just check in with yourself on where you fall in that. Monica, can you sit up and get the paper that's right there? Can you stand up, please, and get these papers?
What paper?
Please,
What paper?
on the chair. Yeah. Does everybody in the sanctuary have one of these papers? No. Okay. If somebody raises their hand, give them one of each of those. All right. I guess passing out to the ones who aren't papered yet. So the first part we're looking at is formal education with post-secondary school with graduate degrees at the middle, with the most power, high school education in the middle, and elementary education at the very edge. Now, these are all based on this artist's interpretation, right? And it might be that in some settings or for some people, that power and privilege still with our markers might shift. We have ability. This image says able-bodied is in the middle towards the center of power, with disability in the middle of that part and significant disability at the margin. Sexuality. This artist puts heterosexuality at the center, gay men specifically in the middle, and other sexual orientations at the margins. Neurodiversity, with neurotypical in the center with power, and neuroatypical in the middle. Neuroatypical meaning experiences like ADHD, experiences like potentially autism that masks more effectively in public settings, right? And then significant neurodivergence at the margin. Mental health, with robust mental health at the center, mostly stable in the middle of that wedge, and vulnerable mental health at the margins. Does anybody else need paper and stickers? All right, awesome. Can you go sit down? You hold on to one too. You need stickers. Thank you, Dante. Then there's body size. And I'm framing all this, right? This is one artist's interpretation. Bear with me. Ranging from slim at the center near power, average in between, and large at the margins. I think there's a lot of ways that these intersect with each other, and whatever. Okay. Housing, with owning property at the center, renting or sheltered in between, and unsheltered at the margin. Wealth, with rich at the center, middle class, whatever that means here, in the middle, and then poor at the margin. Language, with English as a first language at the center, learned English in between, and non-English speakers at the margins. Gender, with cisgender male at the center, cisgender female in between, and other genders at the margins. Citizenship, with citizen at the center, documented immigrants or documented visitors in the middle, and then undocumented people at the margin. And then skin color, which might mean race in this case, it might not, at the center of power, different shades of skin color in between, and darker skin at the margin. What's the point of all this? It's asking us to think about and then acknowledge that we each come to our world with a different lens based on our experiences and our position on each axis of power and privilege. We have different experiences of marginalization, and it's only through the direct, intentional communication and centering of the perspectives and experiences of those who are marginalized that we can understand the ways that injustice is being experienced in the world. On each of your chairs, if you are in the sanctuary, when you came in, there was a set of stickers. You are invited after the service, when we do the coffee, you are invited to do one of two things with those stickers. If you feel like going up to the board is helpful to you, then put your stickers directly on the board where you feel that represents your experiences, right? This should be essentially anonymous. And it will help us to visualize the different ways that people in our congregation experience marginalization and power, even within this relatively heterogeneous congregation. For those of you who do not want to get up and use the poster, I encourage you to put your stickers on your sheet and then just put your sheet up next to here or leave your sheet with your on the chair, and I'll make sure that those stickers get moved to the appropriate place on the board. So don't feel like you have to come out and stand in line and do the thing to participate. And then for those of you on Zoom, you are invited to use the link in the chat box. It's in the chat box notes, Luna.
Already did it.
Incredible, thank you. You're encouraged to use the link in the chat box on Zoom, which we will put back at the very end of service as well, to fill out an anonymous Google form, so we can add your poster responses in the sanctuary, okay? So those 3 different ways to participate based on ability and location. There are caveats to this. There's a huge one. These positions of power are not equidistant. This system is not as equal as the image would have us understand. Some of these factors, the power of position is so much further from the margin, and those who experience marginalization cannot rely on their other power factors to counteract the impact of the axes. Okay. Remember, I was about to say a few years ago, but it was like Obama administration for sure. Dr. Henry Louis Gates, the Harvard professor, money, nice part of town, was getting back from like a world trip for research purposes, had a personal driver driving him, and he was arrested trying to enter his own home even after showing proof of residency. Sometimes all the other powers in the world don't remove the impact of one factor of marginalization. Some factors weigh more heavily. But for now, I will leave you, and I ask you to consider what was so very dangerous about Kim Morrison's work in the English classroom in Greenfield, and how teaching and talking about privilege is such a compelling act that it must be silenced.